At first glance, the Lover's card speaks of romance, duality, and difficult choices. But its esoteric message is far more profound. It symbolizes the awakening of the soul, the breaking of a spell of ignorance, and the remembrance of one's true divinity. Welcome to the Zoryan Oracle, where we dissect archetypes, decode the esoteric, and explore the sacred through mythology, philosophy. In today's episode, we'll explore the Lover's card through a Gnostic lens, where the garden isn't just a place, it is a metaphor for separation, for the illusion of choice, and ultimately for the soul's awakening into its divine origin. The earliest known Lover's card appears in the Viscanti's Forza deck in the 15th century Italy. Originally created as a playing deck for nobility, this card depicted the social and political aspect of union, often marriage, as a contract or alliance. By the 1600s, the Marseille tarot introduced more symbolic tension. A man stands between two women, often interpreted as virtue versus vice, an external representation of inner conflict. Even then, the theme of choice and moral consequence was already central. Now, in the beginning of the 20th century, in 1909, we see the Rider-Waite-Smith Lover's card. This deck emerged as the first tarot designed explicitly for esoteric and divinatory use. Here, the Lover's card takes on rich symbolic depth. Adam and Eve stand beneath the angel Raphael, the tree of life behind Adam, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the serpent behind Eve. We're no longer just observing a romantic or moral choice here. We're witnessing the moment of disobedience, mythic separation, and the emergence of original sin. Now, traditionally, the Lover's card speaks to union, the coming together of opposites through love, harmony, and deep connection. But it also signals an important choice, often between two paths, two values, or two identities. It calls for a decision made from the heart, not from fear. In readings, it can suggest love and romance, especially when paired with court cards. But it's more than just attraction. It can point to commitment, soulmates, twin flames, or the blending of emotional, spiritual, and physical energies into something sacred. Now, let's take a look at the imagery more closely. Here is where the concept of duality can start to take form, something associated with this card's corresponding zodiac sign, Gemini. The man, or Adam, represents the conscious mind, willpower, and outward action. The woman, or Eve, symbolizes the unconscious mind, tuition, receptivity, and soul memory. The angel above them is often considered to be Raphael, guardian of air, communication, and divine guidance, but it can also represent the higher self, the divine witness or inner compass, trying to get us to remember something that we have forgotten. But before we get into that, let's dive a bit deeper into the concept of duality and the zodiac sign of Gemini. Now, the zodiac sign of Gemini encompasses the concept of duality really well. It is male, female, light, dark, good, bad, the physical, the spiritual, active, passive, conscious, unconscious, and obviously positive and negative. And is an air sign, ruling things such as communication and alignment. Now, one might wonder where the concept of the twins have come from. Now, this is the myth of Castor and Pollux. Pollux was the immortal son of Zeus, born of Leda, queen of Sparta, and Zeus who seduced her in the form of a swan. Now, Castor was the mortal son of Leda and her husband, King Tyndareus. Though they had different fathers, they were twin brothers, inseparable in bond. Together they are known as Dioscuri, sons of Zeus, although technically only Pollux was divine. Now, when Castor was killed in battle, Pollux was devastated. Being immortal, he couldn't follow his brother to the underworld Hades. So he begged Zeus to either take his immortality or allow him to share it with Castor. Zeus did agree and transformed them into the constellation Gemini so they could remain together in the sky. That is how we get the zodiac sign, Gemini. And it is easy to see here how the concept of duality can be associated with the sign of Gemini, as Castor and Pollux were both, one was immortal and one was mortal, signifying the true meaning of duality. So now let's go over a little bit about the original story of Adam and Eve that can be found in Genesis. So on the sixth day, God, Yahweh, he created Adam, and from Adam's rib, he created Eve, signifying that Eve was subordinate, comes from Adam, okay? And then he puts them in the garden. He tells them that they can enjoy anything that they want in this garden, except they are not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, now think about that for a little bit. Why would someone want to refrain from knowing something? This is kind of what the theme is about, if you take a look at it and look at the more deeper meaning. Yahweh wanted to keep Adam and Eve ignorant about something, okay? But this was his only ask. This was his only instruction to them. And, they were allowed to partake and enjoy any other plant and with any other animal in the garden. This was supposed to be paradise, correct? And so insert the serpent, the evil serpent, often called Lucifer, often called Satan, which is not mentioned in the Bible. Okay, we can get into that in another video. And the serpent apparently convinces Eve to make Adam eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the forbidden fruit, right? Now, and thus, Eve is portrayed forevermore as the instigator into original sin, the woman who screwed humanity over for the rest of eternity. The blame is on the woman. And Adam eats it, Eve eats from it, because the serpent says to them, eat from this tree and you will be like a God. And remember that for later. And they eat from it, and God, Yahweh, gets so mad. And he throws them out of the garden. They become aware of their nakedness, and they are kicked out of the garden. And they are told that they are not going to be immortal anymore, that they will die, even though they live for a very long time, according to the Old Testament. But that, in summarization, is the original story that is found in Genesis in the Old Testament. Now, what if I told you that my unique take on the Lover's card is actually inspired by some banned books? Ancient Gnostic codices or texts discovered in Egypt in 1945 by a local shepherd. Known as the Nag Hammadi Library, these writings were hidden for over 1,600 years because they were considered dangerous, blasphemous by church authorities. Why? Because they place spirituality and divinity within the individual. No need for external dogma or institutions. Just you your inner knowing, and the sacred union within. So now let's take a closer look as to what Gnosticism is. Gnosticism is an ancient spiritual tradition that emphasizes direct inner knowledge, or gnosis, of the divine. It teaches that the material world is flawed or illusory, created by a lesser divine being called the Demiurge, and that true spiritual awakening comes from realizing that divine spark within and transcending the physical realm. Some key Gnostic ideas are that knowledge and gnosis lead to salvation. The material world is imperfect or a prison for the soul. There is a hidden divine reality beyond the physical, that humans contain a divine spark that has been trapped in the body. Now let's take a look at the family tree when it comes to the Gnostic cosmos. I found this diagram on the internet and I found that it illustrates the whole lineage in a quite succinct manner. We start off with the one, or the monad. If you look to the left, he is illustrated there at the top. He is the one parent. He is the father. He is thinking. He is also called the nous and the mind. In the Apocryphon of John, which is called also the Secret Book of John within the Nag Hammadi library, the one, or the monad, is described as ineffable, supreme, and transcendent, the source of all existence. It is beyond all attributes, name, and form, pure, limitless, and eternal. From this singular, perfect unity, everything else emanates, including the divine realm of the Aons and the material world. The monad is the ultimate fullness, the pleroma, an origin of all spiritual beings, representing the true unknowable God beyond creation. It is always absolutely complete in light. Now, if we go to the right of the circle of the one parent, we get to the mother, thought. Enoia, or Barbelo, she is called. She is upper wisdom. Barbelo is the first emanation from the monad, often described as the divine mother, or the forethought. She is the eternal, the divine feminine aspect, embodying wisdom, grace, and the primal thought that initiates creation. Barbelo acts as the perfect reflection and helper of the One, bringing forth the Aons, spiritual entities in the divine fullness, and serving as the bridge between the unknowable monad and all that follows. Okay, so now we're going to get into the concept of duality here as well. We have the father and the mother, but they are one. Okay, and some other names of Barbelo, which are quite interesting, are the mother father. Okay, she is both the mother and the father. She's encapsulating both of the divine, masculine and the feminine. The first human, she is called, the Holy Spirit, the triple male, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The triple power, the androgynous one with three names, the Aeon among the invisible things, and the first, to come forth. That is Barbelo, the mother, or forethought. Now, going under that circle, the one parent, we get the son, thought, thinking itself, and is often considered to be the Christ consciousness. Now we move down, and the four luminaries and their 12 aeons were created. Now that is in the bigger sphere, okay? And the last aeon was Sophia, which is the embodiment of wisdom, of insight. Now, Sophia, who is the wisdom of afterthought and who constitutes an eternal realm, conceived of a thought from herself. So she conceived a thought from herself with the conception of the invisible spirit and foreknowledge. She wanted to bring forth something like herself without the consent of the spirit who had not given approval, and without her partner and without his consideration. Now, it can be often said that Sophia's consort, okay, now all of these different Aons had a male or female partner. They had a consort. Okay, this is the duality of this cosmos. Each one had a partner. And it highlights the importance of creating or embodying through life, utilizing aspects of both the masculine and the feminine, the divine masculine and the feminine. And when you are more prone to one or the other, what comes forth, what you create can be skewed or deformed. Let's keep going here. She did not find her partner, and she considered this without the spirit's consent and without the knowledge of her partner. Nonetheless, she gave birth, and because of the invincible power within her, her thought was not an idle thought. Something came out of her that was imperfect and different in appearance from her, for she had produced it without her partner. It did not resemble its mother, and it was misshapen. So she wanted to create something of her own. She wanted to create something that was similar to the pleroma, was similar to the monad, was similar to the aeon. She wanted to create, but she created it in a vacuum. She created all by herself without her partner. And what was created was a monstrosity. When Sophia saw that what her desire had produced, it changed into the figure of a snake with the face of a lion. Its eyes were like flashing bolts of lightning. She cast it away from her outside the realm so that none of the immortals would see it. She had produced it ignorantly. She surrounded it with a bright cloud and put a throne in the middle of the cloud so that no one would see it except the Holy Spirit, who is called the Mother of the Living. She named her offspring Yaldabaoth. Okay? So her creation was so monstrous that she wanted to hide it away from the rest of the pleroma, the rest of the aeons. She was embarrassed because she created it in ignorance, independent of her partner and independent of the one, the monad. And so she kind of secluded it in a cloud. Yaldabaoth was his name. Now he also has other names like Sakla and Samael. And she hid him away from everybody else. And he, being born there, only knew of himself and thought that he was the ruler and creator of the world, that he was the only God, and that there were no other gods before him. So, in summary, here, in the pleroma, in the divine realm, aeons are usually emanated in male female pairs, in syzygies. They are harmonious opposites that act together in unity. Sophia, or wisdom, is traditionally the last aeon and is supposed to act in partnership with a masculine counterpart, often understood to be Christ, self generated or closely associated aeon. However, Sophia, out of her own passion and desire to know the unknowable Father, tries to imitate the creative act of the monad alone. She creates without the consent of the spirit and without her male syzygy, and this results in a flawed creation. Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, who is ignorant of the higher spiritual realms and claims himself as God. This is Yahweh. Okay, so now let's get into Yaldabaoth, otherly known as Sakla Samael, and in Gnostic circles, Yahweh in the Old Testament is the Demiurge, is Yaldabaoth. Now, he leaves his mother, he leaves the place where she left him in this secluded circle, this secluded realm, and he wants to start making things of his own. He thinks he is God. Okay, so he starts making different powers. Okay, these are considered to be his little helpers in this realm that he has created. These are the archons, right? And this creation that he makes, this world that he makes, is the 3D realm that we see here. This is Yahweh creating the earth. All right. And if you remember in the Old Testament, we'll get into this a little bit later, but when he says, let us create man in our own image, this is Yaldabaoth talking amongst his archons, right? It is a plural statement that Yahweh makes in the Old Testament. And we will see that when we get into Yaldabaoth's creation of Adam and Eve. Okay, these stories are taken from these banned scriptures and found in the Nag Hammadi library. Okay, there is the Gospel of the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Tripartite Tractate, and others. They all go through this creation myth, this creation story, otherwise found in Genesis. Right? And when he creates all of this stuff, all of this world, these beings, he says to them, I am a jealous God. There are no other gods before me. And where do we find that statement? In the Old Testament, coming from Yahweh. So now Yaldabaoth and his archons are molding Adam. They want to create man. They want to create a human being. So all the angels and demons work together until they fashioned the physical body. But for a long time, their creation did not stir or move at all. Okay, so their creation did not have a soul. It just laid there lifeless. Adam was not alive. Now, when the mother, Sophia, wanted to take back some of the power she had relinquished to the first ruler, Yaldabaoth, she prayed to the most merciful Mother Father, so that's Barbelo. With the sacred command of Barbelo, she sent 5 luminaries, so angels, Aons, down to the place of the archons, and they advised Yaldabaoth so that he might recover the mother's power. They said to Yaldabaoth, breathe some of your spirit into the face of Adam, and then the body will arise. He breathed his spirit into Adam. The spirit is the power of his mother Sophia, but he did not realize this because he lives in ignorance. The mother's power went out of Yaldabaoth and into the psychical and physical body that had been made to be like the one who is from the beginning. The body started to move and became powerful, and it was enlightened. At once, the rest of the powers became jealous. Although Adam had come into being through all of them, and they had given their power to this human, Adam was more intelligent than the creators and the first ruler. When they realized that Adam was enlightened and could think more clearly than they, and was stripped of evil, they took and threw Adam into the lowest part of the whole material realm. Now, isn't this different than the Genesis story? The blessed, benevolent, merciful Mother Father, Barbelo, had compassion for the mother's powers, that's Sophia, that had been removed from the first ruler. The spark. The rulers might be able to overpower the psychical, perceptible body once again. So, with its benevolent spirit and great mercy, the Mother Father, Barbelo, sent a helper to Adam. an enlightened afterthought who was from the mother father and who was called life. This is also called Zoe. She helped the whole creature, laboring with it, restoring it to its fullness, teaching it about the descent of the seed, teaching it about the way of ascent, which is the way of descent. Enlightened afterthought was hidden within Adam. So that's life. Zoe, with the spark, was hidden within Adam so that the rulers might not recognize her, but that afterthought might be able to restore what the mother lacked. Another emanation or another interpretation of Eve and Zoe or life comes from a different book within the Nag Hammadi library, which illustrates that after the day of rest, Sophia sent Zoe, so life, her daughter. Zoe is Sophia's daughter, who is also called Eve, as an instructor to raise up Adam, in whom there was no soul, so that those whom he would produce might become vessels of the light. When Eve saw her male partner cast down, she pitied him and she said, Adam, live, rise up on the earth. Immediately, her word became an accomplished deed. For when Adam rose up, immediately he opened his eyes. And when he saw her, he said, You will be called the mother of the living because you are the one who gave me life. So this is very different than the Genesis story of Eve being withdrawn out of Adam's ribcage as a rib, right? Being subordinate. Adam was lifeless in the Gnostic interpretation in the Gnostic books. Yaldabaoth created this being, but he had no life. He was dead. There was no soul in him. And Sophia sent down her daughter, Zoe, which is the spark of life, which can also be considered Eve. Eve was a separate entity that was sent down from the pleroma in order to give Adam life. She gave Adam life. She wasn't taken from him. She gave him existence. Now that the Archons and Yaldabaoth see the creation that they are jealous of, because now that they hold the divine spark that they lack, they are more Adam and Eve are more powerful than they are. They all took counsel. They came to Adam and Eve timidly, and they said to him, The fruit of every tree created for you in paradise may be eaten, but be aware, don't eat from the tree of knowledge. If you do eat, you will die. After they gave them a great fright, they withdrew up to their authorities. Then came the one who was wiser than all the creatures, who was called the beast. This is the serpent. When he saw the likeness of their mother Eve, he said to her, What is it that God said to you? Don't eat from the tree of knowledge? She said, He said not only don't eat from it, but also don't touch it, lest you die. He said to her, Don't be afraid. You certainly shall not die, for he knows that when you eat from it, your mind will be sobered and you will become like gods, knowing the difference between evil and good people. For he said this to you because he is jealous, so that you would not eat from it. Now, Eve believed the words of the instructor, the serpent. She looked at the tree and saw that it was beautiful and appealing, and she desired it. She took some of its fruit and ate, and she gave it to her husband also, and he ate too. Then their minds opened. From when they ate, the light of knowledge shone for them. When they put on shame, they knew that they were naked with regard to knowledge. When they sobered up, they saw that they were naked, and they became enamored of one another. When they saw that their makers had beastly forms, they loathed them. They understood a great deal now. So now Yaldabaoth is freaking out, and he says to his archons, Now perhaps he will be deceived as with the tree of knowledge, and will come to the tree of life, and eat from it, and become immortal, and rule, and condemn us, and regard us, and all of our glory as a folly. and then he will pass judgment on us and the world. Come, let's cast him out of paradise down to the earth and the place from where he was taken, so that he will no longer be able to know anything better than we can. And so they cast Adam and his wife out of paradise. So here you can see that Adam and Eve now, they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they saw Yaldabaoth and the archons for what they were. They were beastly abominations. And they had within them Sophia, Zoe, the divine spark. And so before Adam and Eve could eat from the tree of life and realize that they were divine and that they were immortal and that they were beyond the divinity of the archons and of Yaldabaoth, because they had Sophia's spark within, they cast them out of the garden to keep them ignorant, to keep them a slave, to keep them trapped. And this is the whole concept of Gnosticism, is that Yaldabaoth is this creator god, Yahweh, that imprisons humanity in this 3D realm in earth, so that we may forget our divinity. We will forget how powerful we are. We will forget that we are God. So we are trapped in this 3D material world. Now let's talk a bit about the serpent. In traditional mythology within the Genesis story, the serpent is considered to be Satan or Lucifer. Now, those two things are two different beings. Satan's definition of the word is adversary, okay? And Lucifer is the light bearer, the light bringer. Lucifer is the morning star. Lucifer is Venus. So Venus typically, when it's the morning star, rises before the sun, and it is the light bringer. It is the bringer of the light. It brings the sun. It illuminates things, right? So it can be said that there can be a comparison between Lucifer, the light bringer, and Christ, often in Gnostic circles, because Christ brings knowledge. Christ is the illuminator. Christ is the sun. Right? And in the Gospel of Philip, it is said that it was not the serpent that caused them to eat, it was the Christ. So instead of bringing Adam and Eve into sin, making Adam and Eve disobey Yahweh or Yaldabaoth, the serpent freed them of their chains to ignorance and exposed them to their divinity. The serpent, Christ consciousness, illuminates you to your power, to who you are. Now that we've explored the lovers in Adam and Eve through the Gnostic creation myth, let's take another look at the card. Adam stands before the tree of life, Eve beside the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The serpent coils upward, whispering ancient truths, not temptations, into her ear. Above them, Sophia hovers in angelic form, a divine witness reminding them of who they truly are. The sun radiates behind her, an emanation of the monad, the source. This is not a story of sin, it is the moment of awakening. Here they choose knowledge over ignorance. They reclaim their divine essence. In uniting the divine masculine and feminine, they begin the alchemical work of creating heaven on earth. You must eat the fruit. You must choose the path less traveled, because that is the path of remembrance and ultimately of enlightenment. So the Lover's card urges us to remember the divine power that lies within. It challenges us to think for ourselves and question the stories that we've been told, especially those designed to keep us ignorant of our own light so others may retain control. This archetype is about awakening, choosing the red pill. It's the moment we see through illusion and recognize reality as a constructed trap, a prison meant to distract us from our soul's true potential. The lovers ask us to unite our inner opposites, reclaim our sovereignty, and walk the path of divine remembrance. And in the world we live in today, this call has never been more relevant. If today's exploration spoke to you, consider subscribing to my channel. And let me know in the comments if you'd like more videos on other tarot cards or deeper dives into banned Gnostic scripture. This has been the Zoryan Oracle. Until next time, follow the symbols, trust the mystery, and remember, the sacred is always speaking.